Well, if you're here, you kind of already know the deal. Of course, the Detroit Lions lost again. This is a game that I don't think anybody was really expecting them to win, though, without Matthew Stafford in the lineup. Kerryon Johnson obviously still hurt. And playing a team who's, even if you have those players, they're just way better than you are anyway. But we can get into this. We can get into more of kind of how you think or what you think the Lions should do moving forward in the future, because obviously this season is lost. The only real reason to pay attention anymore as a Lions fan is to look at some of the other teams who are at 2 wins and 3 wins to see if you can bump yourself up in draft position, because with the Falcons winning today, the Lions should put the Lions at number 5 in the draft, which, I mean, obviously the higher the pick, the better, but you also have to have a general manager that you trust making that pick. And I'm not sure, well, I don't, and I'm not sure many Lions fans feel confident in that anyway. Jim Wells says no pass rush, unreal. Yeah, the Lions, they haven't been able to get a pass rush all season. You saw it again today. I think they only had the 1 sack, which came at like the very, very late end of the game with Trey Flowers, who's out there making his money. Matt P already said to be back next year. I didn't hear that report. I heard there's like a flimsy source from like a Sports Illustrated offshoot, I think, was the closest I heard to Matt Patricia coming back to the Lions. But man, if they finish 3-12-1, like they might, they only have 3 more games to get there. I think everybody's broomed out. I don't know how you can't think that. They started 2-0-1, so for the last 13 games they went 1-12, which this shouldn't be acceptable by any organization, any team, or really anything like that. The weird part about today's game, just kind of talk about it for a little bit, is it was actually a fairly close game, and if you look at the second half, it probably would have been like down to the wire and a nail biter if you still care about the Lions' wins and losses. If the Lions hadn't absolutely choked away the end of the first half, or they gave up the big play to Stephon Diggs, and then Dalvin Cook ran in the score. But, other than that, you obviously take those 6 points away, and it's not like you're taking those away and they can still extend the drive or something like that. But if the Lions, when they gave them the ball back, let me see here, play-by-play, let's see when they did have the ball, because they scored fairly quickly in the second quarter. June 29, 6 plays. Yeah, so they went 65 yards in 46 seconds. So the Lions basically gave the ball back to Minnesota at the end of the first half with like a minute left off of a missed field goal, but they were still on the 35-yard line, which you should be able to hold the team. And it obviously didn't happen. So that touchdown was the biggest difference in this game. And Lions, of course, scored late, tried the onside kick, and then from that point on, it was just never going to get it back. ESPN NFL Insider broke it last week. They are bringing him back. I feel like that would have been bigger news. I'm not calling you a liar, Jim. I just didn't see it from ESPN. Anthony Martinez, it's all about their draft position. Yeah, right now they're top 5, baby. So now we got to root for some more teams like the Giants. The Dolphins lost a heartbreaker today, which would have vaulted them above the Lions and would have pushed the Lions back down to, or would have pushed the Lions to 4 instead of 5. But the Dolphins lost on the field goal. Chris Spielman kept preaching patience. Well, I mean, Spielman's got a lot of love for the organization, and we've seen former players like Glover Quinn come out and back the organization, but it's a lot of times you don't see like great players doing that. I know Calvin has done that, but again, he feels like he was wronged by the organization. But usually you see a guy like Barry Sanders or Herman Moore, Chris Spielman, some of the better players, and this isn't just Lions specific. It goes for most of the organizations too. But most teams, they're all-time great players. They don't come out and just bash the team for whatever reason. So for Chris Spielman to come here and say, like, everybody needs to go on national TV, he'd probably feel a bit, like traitorous himself if he started just bashing the Lions on national television. So he has to preach patience because he's still got a good standing with people in the organization, or at least the owners. Wouldn't matter if they had the number 1 pick. It might. We got the Bucks next week. Yeah, I don't see us being able to stop the Bucks through the air, but Jameis Winston is also always good for a pick 6 or 2. So, Darius Slay gets in front of one of the Mike Evans passes, then they could, if the Lions win, that'll spell trouble for them in terms of their draft position. But I do expect the Bucks to beat us, and I feel pretty confident about that. They went toe to toe. The game might be over, but they're going toe to toe with the Colts right now, and the Colts are of course a pretty good team, still fighting for the playoffs. Let me see. The Bucks game could tell a lot about the draft position though. So I'm trying to see what that draft position looks like, except my computer is being slow. So let me go ahead and check on my phone to see more. All right, Google. What is this? Is it going to work now? Probably not. See more. Trash. But I do expect the Bucks game to be big for draft position, because if my mind is right, they have like 2 or 3 wins, but that might not actually end up being the case. So I'll look at that for you guys, and then we'll come back to that. It says we got Bucks, Saints, Pack left. So that's 2 losses right there to the Saints and the Packers. And like I said, I don't feel confident about us beating the Bucks. So we should end up with 3-12-1, which I don't know if you guys how long you've been kind of doing this with me, but we've been on here every week except for the Thanksgiving game. But I was eating and I was with family, so I wasn't about to hop on here. Sorry, y'all. As far as the games left, I don't think we're gonna win. And then by the time, I don't know, they were 3-5-1 or something like that. Then on, I was all aboard the 3-12-1 express, because I wanted a top 3 pick, and if they finish 3-12-1, top 3 pick is something that should be very, very much within reach here. Oh no, the Bucks have 5 wins. I'm tripping. Man, I was thinking of Atlanta, but Atlanta's about to get another win today too, so that's gonna boost. The Falcons up, and now we're competing with the Giants. We're competing with the Redskins. And we are competing with the Cardinals. But the Cardinals is weird, since we tied them. I think who's ever played the worst schedule, or like the easier schedule, ends up getting gets the draft pick closer to number 1. And then Dolphins, again, 3 wins. The Bengals is the one team that we're probably not about to catch, because they do only have 1 win. Why did they say the Redskins? The Redskins don't have 3 wins. There's no way. I think I lied to you there too, but I think CBS lied to me first. I know the Redskins beat us. I didn't know they had 3 wins. It's crazy. They beat. Yeah, no, they only have. No, they do. Yep, because they beat the Dolphins, they beat us, and they beat the Panthers. So it is the Giants who only have 2 wins. Now we got that straightened up. My man Nick Harris, shout out to Nick, says not who but position do you think we should go in the top 5 pick? Call me crazy, but with my mad love for Stafford, if Burrow is sitting there, pull the trigger, trade Stafford to get other assets. Just a thought. I mean, if you have Joe Burrow sitting there, you have to take him. That's a franchise-changing player. But they really need everything, which is kind of a cop-out to say. But so there are a couple of guys that I really like. Pass rushing, obviously Chase Young, if he's there. Same kind of thing with Joe Burrow. If you are sitting at 3 and it goes Burrow, then somebody else, and then Young somehow falls to you, or, opposite, if it goes Young, somebody else, and Burrow still sitting there, I think those are 2 players that you have to take no matter what. But they need to be able to rush the passer. They need to be able to stop the pass. They need to be able to block teams from getting to their quarterback. And they still need some linebackers. There are a couple of, there's a hybrid guy from Clemson. I think Simmons is his last name. Isaiah Simmons, maybe Isaiah Simons, but he looks like he's really good. He can play really kind of anywhere on the defense. If you're familiar with Michigan football, he's sort of like that Viper role, where he's just almost like a Swiss Army knife. Other than that, I'd like to see somebody that can rush the passer, but unless you have like Joe Burrow sitting there, I think you have to take him. But rushing the passer, so linebacker, just somewhere on the front seven that can get to the quarterback is who I would want to see them take with what looks like pretty much their guaranteed top 5 pick now. Jim Wells says Bucks 4-9 with the win today. Hey, there you go. No, so this said the Bucks have 5 wins. But again, maybe whatever. I'm not worried about it. I thought they had way less. Yeah, this says the Bucks are 5-7. My bad, Bucks, Broncos, Packers. Oh, so we don't play the Saints, we play the Broncos. I don't think we should beat the Broncos anyway, especially with Drew Lock out here looking like the best quarterback of all time. Knowing the Lions, they'll draft a guard. I mean, we need a guard. We need guards. We need tackles. We need really everything. The only thing that you'd probably be mad at is if they took like Jerry Jeudy, the wide receiver from Alabama, with number 3, 4, 5, whatever they have. 49ers won 48-46. Jesus Christ! I don't know. I was keeping an eye on that game. And I hate the 49ers. Just this year, I just never thought they were as good as the record said they were. But they keep winning, so it shows what I know. Austin says it's a badly ran organization. Watching the Lions is like dying a slow death. It is. So the only reason that I'm watching the Lions now is because I do this, of course, and so I can talk about it with everybody else that loves to subject themselves to Lions football. But I'm also very interested in the draft position because I do think if they keep losing, then they fire Quinn and Patricia. I don't see how you can justify, even with Matthew Stafford hurt, how you're able to justify 12 straight loss or 1-12 in your last 13 games. Because even when you're playing with a guy like David Blau, who he's not a good quarterback, but he also hasn't played terrible these last couple of games, and he's played well enough to give you guys a better chance to win than kind of the rest of the team is showing you, if that makes any sense at all. But I mean that's really why I'm watching now. But even obviously we do the Sports Carnage podcast, which we ended up dropping on Thursday, so check that out if you haven't. We talked a lot about the Michigan-Ohio State game, which we also did a reaction video for, and we've kind of given up on talking the Lions on the podcast only because there's no reason to, unless and somebody does end up getting fired, or of course when the NFL draft comes, we'll do more stories on that. But so check out our podcast if you haven't. But the point to that was to say that Paul on our podcast, he messaged our group chat today like, I'm done with the Lions this year. I'm done. I'm done with the Lions until Stafford comes back, until we get new people. So he's it shows you that it can happen. And Paul's someone that's a huge Lions fan. He wouldn't call himself a Lions slappy, but we would, at least when it comes to Stafford, even though it seems like he hates everybody else on the team. That will be their excuse to keep Mad P with all the injuries. I mean, every team has to deal with injuries, so if they do end up going with the injury excuse, not every team starting quarterback gets hurt. But even when Stafford was playing, you were still only 3-5-1, and you were, you started off 2-0-1, so at that point you had lost 5 games and won 1. So in your last 6 games with Matthew Stafford, you were 1-5, which, of course, it's not Stafford's fault, but it's not like with Stafford you were putting up some monumental results and you started off 7-2, and then your quarterback got hurt, and then you ended up finishing 8-8. Like that's way more reasonable to go ahead and keep a coaching staff to say, hey, you're clearly on track to do something great, and which was really the opposite with this team. If Stafford's playing, how many more wins do you have? Right? Honestly, you're probably looking at like 2 more wins maybe, which doesn't do anything except really hurt your draft position when it looks like a lot of these teams are going to end up finishing with like 4 and 5 wins. And then if you can keep yourself at that 3, even though you do have the tie, if the only teams below you have 1 win, of course, like the Bengals do, or 2 like the Giants do, then that really helps you out in terms of the future. But you also have to give somebody that can see a better future for you, as opposed to giving it to somebody that's they've not shown an ability to be able to draft high-level talent in the first couple rounds. They've gotten some nice players at the end, but or at the middle and the end of the rounds, but that's not how you that's how you build like your depth of a team. But if you want to really be a contender, you have to be able to hit on higher draft picks, because those are the guys that are the blue chip talent in the NFL. Dylan says, at this point, we can only hope that the Lions don't draft the OSU defensive end. Much bigger needs like linebacker or defensive back. You're talking about them not drafting Chase Young? No, that's crazy. I think Chase Young would be an immediate impact player from day one in the NFL. So if you can get Chase Young, you're going to get somebody that's able to rush the passer. And he's also really good at stopping the run too. So I understand why you'd say they need a defensive back, especially if they do move on from Darius Slay, which it sounds like they might, especially, around the draft time, to go ahead and get some more assets. But your pass defense is bad, and your run defense, it didn't play terrible today, but it's still just kind of bad overall. And your linebackers can't cover anybody. But what helps your pass defense more than anything isn't you having like the Legion of Boom back there with Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor, and those other dudes. It's about you being able to get to the quarterback. One of the reasons that, the quarterbacks have been able to slice up the Lions defense is because they're not being pressured, and they're sitting back there with all day to throw. I mean, Dak Prescott literally said it when they played the Lions. He's going through his reads 2 or 3 times because, he just had all day back there in the pocket. Jim Wells, Chase Young going to the Bengals? Yeah, probably. Chase Young or Burrow. See, Coach had a black pencil today. I did not see that Matt Patricia had a black pencil today. But, hopefully that signifies his coaching funeral, not his personal funeral. We would never wish that on somebody, but hopefully that signifies his coaching funeral here in Detroit. Davis gone and Slay gone. I hope Davis is gone. Jared Davis is terrible. Yeah, Oklahoma linebacker or LSU safety. I mean, there's a lot of high-level talent in the draft, especially on the defensive end. It seems like this year it looks like it'd just be a pretty good first round every year, or this year, and you could probably say that about every year. But because the Lions are back picking in like the top 5 or the top 3, I think it's just maybe something that we're doing as Lions fans and saying, oh yeah, this guy's really good. This guy's like franchise changing. But there are a lot of like really, really high level players. And you guys may have dove into more like mock drafts than I have. I've looked at a couple, and I've looked at some of the guys that I think the Lions have not only been projected to take, but I think would help the team and would make sense for them to take. And I like pretty much every option that they're throwing at you, whether it's a guy like Okudah. Back when they're a little bit down, they got a guy like Okwara from Notre Dame. Obviously, Chase Young, Joe Burrow is kind of the best case scenario if they land there. Derek Brown from, I want to say he's from Auburn, and then the dude from Clemson, I think, Isaiah Simons, something like that. But there's a lot of players in the draft where you feel like they could really end up helping your team. But as the draft gets closer, and probably even sometime in the next couple weeks, as just the excitement for the season, what's left of it, or even people's just patience for the season is probably a better way to put it, as that starts to go down. You guys obviously follow Detroit Sports Nation. I don't know if there's a way that you can like set alerts for when they post or something, but there's going to be a lot more kind of draft related material coming out from the website. So if you guys want some really good draft content, just make sure you're following DSN, and then when you see there, click it, and then you'll probably have a better idea of who you want, maybe even who the Lions are looking at, because there's a lot of that content on DSN as well, letting you guys know who the Lions are reported to be looking at, who they should be looking at going after, kind of how different players fit with the scheme. So be on the lookout for that if you're really kind of into the draft process. Wesley says, if Patricia goes, do you look at Ron Rivera? I'd like having Ron Rivera. I think he's a better coach than Matt Patricia. So, kind of right there, it's an immediate upgrade. I like the coach from Baylor is Matt Rule. I mean, I even like PJ Fleck. I know he just got the big extension at Minnesota. But, there's a lot of guys that I'm looking at before I'm bringing back Matt Patricia. But Ron Rivera is one of those guys. It seems like the team was pretty bummed out that he was gone. And, if you're going to make excuses for Matt Patricia saying, hey, he didn't have Matthew Stafford, Ron Rivera lost Cam Newton too. And he's a guy who's, of course, made a Super Bowl, not saying much, like Caldwell made a Super Bowl with the Colts. But, Ron Rivera's made a Super Bowl. And I think the most impressive part of his tenure in Carolina is that he's been able to build good teams on multiple occasions. So, a difference in a guy like him, in Caldwell, and not to keep picking on him, but in Caldwell in Indianapolis, is Caldwell was handed like a ready-made team. And Ron Rivera in Carolina, had the ability, because he's been there a while, to, just build up a team on a number of occasions. They, of course, only made the one Super Bowl, but, there are other years they were in the playoffs, probably other years where they won the division too. And just overall, they were usually a pretty good team. And a lot of that did ride on the health of their quarterback. But, he's able to coach a quarterback to an MVP season in the same year that they did win the Super Bowl. Tell Rivera that we'll draft the top-ranked linebacker if he comes to us as defensive coordinator. Now that'd be the hire. I think Ron Rivera gets a look at a head coaching job. If it's not here, then somewhere else. I'd be shocked if he ends up taking the defensive coordinator role. But, that's your dream scenario, right, is you get him here to only run the defense, and then you're able to pick up a guy in the draft who's a high-level impact defender right away. I don't think Slay is gone. I believe we will sign him. Now I could see Quinn letting Galladay walk after next year. I think you probably let both of them walk, especially if Quinn's here. Now, if Quinn's not here, you kind of throw all that out the window, right? But if they're still trying to model their organization after the Patriots, the Patriots aren't high on paying. Darius Slay's about to be 30 years old, and he's looking for a big contract. I don't think that that's something that the Patriots would do, so I don't think that that's something that the Lions will do. And then obviously receivers, the Patriots have never been big on paying a receiver more than, what kind of their really just more than what they're worth. Even if the market value says this receiver is doing this and he's getting paid this, those teams obviously aren't winning like the Patriots, and receiver is a position that's a little bit more expendable. So I think if Quinn's here, neither of those guys end up getting signed. And I also don't think it's really a great idea to sign either of those guys. I love Kenny Galladay, but you don't need a high-level receiver. Especially you don't need to pay a very high-level receiver to be able to win. And you see that really just year after year. Even the Rams last year, they have Brandon Cooks and Robert Woods, who are both good receivers. But, it's not like they have an Odell Beckham or Julio Jones, and you see their teams. And, of course, it's not all their fault, but they do have more of the cap designated to them than, the good teams pay their receivers. And you see their teams, Cleveland and Atlanta, just absolutely faltering. And at this point, receiver is also a position that's more prone to like the diva mentality. So, you even see it with Odell Beckham, who's, trying to, if you believe the reports, trying to force his way out of Cleveland after a year getting traded there and seeming like it was going to be, a good situation for him because he had Baker Mayfield. The Browns looked like they were on the come up, and then they just bottom out, and now the receiver wants out of there. So I think it's probably more headache than it's worth to pay a receiver that much money unless you're paying a guy like, Larry Fitzgerald or something. Well, not Larry Fitzgerald now, but old Larry Fitzgerald. Austin says, honestly, the Lions should have a fire sale on to get young playmakers and acquire trades for draft picks. I think they probably will. But so I think a guy like Darius Slay is definitely going to be moved for some draft capital, just closer to the draft. Because teams are going to want, even a team, quote unquote, like renting Darius Slay. You get one of the best, and I think he graded out Pro Football Focus this year really well. He had like 2 bad games, but other than that, he's been pretty consistently solid all year. So you're going to give a team another, really high-level cornerback where in one part, or at least in 1 year, if they feel like they're ready to contend, they can shut down they can shut down part of the field or shut down an opposing team's best wide receiver. Got to go Christmas caroling at nursing homes. Have a good day. All right, Jim, you sound like a fantastic human being and Santa Claus himself. But have a good day to you as well. Happy Thanksgiving, because, again, we missed that. But, other than that, The Lions, again, there's not a lot to talk about from this game. There's not really a lot to take away. They didn't get shut out, which might give you some sense of pride. They were able to tack on that touchdown pretty late. But, I mean, other than that, it's really what you expected from a team, again, without their best players. And they're facing a team that is much better than them. It lets Minnesota complete the sweep of us. And now the Lions' next couple games, as Jim had mentioned, are against the Bucs, the Broncos, and then the Packers at the end of the year. So, at least I don't really feel good about the Lions being able to win any of those games because we know the playmakers that aren't coming back. Even T.J. Hawkinson, for as kind of criticized as he's been this year for being drafted so high, for a rookie tight end, he's had a pretty stellar year. But that's not saying a lot because the bar for a rookie tight end is so low. But he's gone. Obviously, Kerryon's gone. Matthew Stafford is gone for the rest of the year. So that's kind of where you end up at. And you're just going to be, riding with a flat tire to the finish line on the season. But, hopefully that puts you right in the parking lot of Bell Tire, where then you get the tire of your dreams that you get to pick. And then, you get a new driver of the car is what I want to see. And just from like a majority of the fan base that I've heard from, it's I think is what they want to see really as well. The last one here, Lloyd Hicks, can we just apologize to Caldwell and Austin and bring them back? I mean, that's kind of how bad Matt Patricia's been, is it has people clamoring back for Caldwell and Terrell Austin, who I still don't think that the Lions should have kept, because I don't think particularly either of those gentlemen were really good at their job, but they are better than whatever Patricia and Pasqualoni are bringing to the table. But that's what we have for you guys today. I will see you probably sometime next week, whether it's the Pistons, Michigan State, or whatever. If you care about it, Michigan in the Citrus Bowl against Alabama. It's a pretty yikes draw for them. And then Michigan State got the Pinstripe Bowl in New York against Wake Forest. So it's not a game I'll be really excited to watch. And if anybody wants Quick Lane Bowl tickets, just let me know. Other than that, check out the Sports Carnage podcast if you haven't already. Rate, subscribe, review. You can find our link right there in the description here. Just click on that light up blue link. It'll take you everywhere you need to be. And then we also just dropped on Thursday. So obviously take a look at that. Rate it, listen to it, Apple Podcast, iTunes, Podbean, YouTube channel now. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, really just everywhere that you can find us. Again, that is Sports Carnage. If you need the spelling, it's right there in the description for you. Thank you all, and you guys have a great night.